The upcoming UFO report by the UAP Task Force. The whole world has been waiting for it. What can we expect from it, and how is the world going to react? Joining me now are Don Schmitt and Gary Heseltine. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Pleasure to be with you.
Gary, you're the Vice President of ICER, the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, and this is the very first interview show on our new YouTube channel. Can you tell us a little bit about ICER? How did it all start?
Okay, the origins of ICER stem from what was called a disclosure initiative by a China-based UFO group approximately 3 years ago. And actually, Don and Roberto Panotti were in it involved from the beginning, just ahead of me, when they were invited to China. And from that, they were then told to try to go away and basically look for credible researchers to put this 30-country coalition together. At that point there, Don contacted me and said there's going to be a conference in Moscow. Would I like to go? Moscow was a place I'd always dreamed of going, so it was a great privilege to go. And we met along with maybe 8 other people, researchers, and over the course of 3 days we had discussions with this Chinese UFO group. And we were told that there was going to be a conference for more people early in 2019 in China. We waited and waited and nothing happened, and we never really got a genuine excuse as to why it didn't happen. So eventually, by the time it came through to the anniversary of the Moscow conference, which was October 2019, we'd kind of said between us that if we didn't hear anything by then, that the Chinese initiative appeared to be dead. So, of course, that then comes and goes, and then we're soon into early 2020, and then, of course, we then embroiled into a pandemic situation. People go into lockdown all around the world, and it's a very bizarre situation. But by then, we'd already talked to maybe 20 other national or potential national representatives, and there was a lot of goodwill. And so when everybody started to talk on Zoom because of the pandemic, I suddenly thought, well, it would be a real shame to lose this momentum and goodwill that we'd built up amongst ourselves. So I took out a Zoom Pro account in June of 2020, and then started saying, well, come on, let's all get together and do something. And that's what we've done ever since, is just planned for our launch. And we've created working groups in various areas. And we've really worked hard to get ready to go public, which we did on the 25th of May, 2021. Strategically ahead of the US Navy Task Force Report. So that's our origins. It stemmed out of a failed Chinese initiative, but here we are, 27 countries on 5 continents, and we're here and now out in the public domain, hopefully to insert ourselves into this subject at a global level.
Yeah, you were both present at the conference in Moscow, right?
Correct.
That is correct.
Yes. So, Don, what was your impression? What do you think? What is the interest of the Russians in this phenomenon?
Well, the Russian interests, they were continuously taking us aside. And even prior to that, the last meeting of 3 that I had in China, specifically in Chongqing, which is a city larger than Mexico City, 31 million people. And a Russian delegation had already, as far as met with us, including one of the Russian cosmonauts who expressed a tremendous interest in the subject. And he was one of the people who took me aside and even made the offer of creating a Russian Roswell exhibit at the Space Museum right in Moscow. And so we would dine, and we went on a bus tour together throughout Chongqing, and the conversation was constantly on the subject of UFOs and the exchanging of information. Now, I hearken back to when the Soviet Union originally fell, and we had American scientists such as Dr. Jacques Vallée and a number of others who had hoped that there would be an exchange of such data, information upon that time. And when a number of them, like Dr. Richard Haynes, actually went to Moscow with the hope of exchanging material, they discovered that much of it had been cleared out. And much to their dismay, it was allegedly cleared out by the American CIA, which was quite amusing. The idea that even in Russia, that the CIA seemed to have control, or at least was monitoring their own UFO research. And I think that's one of the reasons that they latched on to us, the Russian investigators. They wanted to hear from us about their own respective research that they were not hearing in their own mainland.
Yeah. So, Gary, we've been waiting for the UAP Task Force Report for 6 months now. And we are all thrilled to see what is going to come out. What do you suspect is going to be written in there?
Well, I think we have a bit of an inkling because of pre-release information that came approximately 10 days ago. I don't think they're going to say it's alien or be definitive, anything like that. However, what they do appear to be saying is that they've got something like 120 incidents, probably dating back to 2004, of which we probably only know 9 or 10. So this in itself will be, to UFO researchers, UAP researchers, a great deal of new information, especially if it's date and times and when and locations kind of thing. That's a lot of research that we can do after the report is published. I suspect that the government will try to say, well, it could be foreign adversary. I'm hoping that the mainstream media, now that they realize that there is a real story here, will step up to the plate and do what they should have been doing a long time ago, which is really investigate and go and find the evidence. Now, there is a real story here. I think a lot of the media are just waking up to that fact. So I'm hoping that, akin to a Watergate-style inquiry for the truth, will take place by the media, because it isn't going to be good enough for the government to just leave it out there to the DNI just to say, oh, well, we can't rule out aliens, but we have no evidence of aliens. They have to do a bit better than that, and I'm hoping that the media will really begin to press them in a way that they've never done before. So I think whilst they'll try to play it down, I think that there will be a lot of good information that will be vital to take in the next step towards a disclosure world.
Yeah. Now, Don, my question to you, from what we've learned, it seems that the report will only deal with cases from 2004 onwards. You being the acclaimed Roswell researcher, what's your take on this?
Well, I'm not surprised, because they would then have to acknowledge that this has been a deception on the part of the American public, on the part of the world, since 1947, and they're not about to do that. As much as they can restrict and limit their scope, it softens culpability as to why they essentially have covered this up for all these decades. The other concern is that in denying any previous experience, I mean, I can almost guarantee they're not going to mention Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book. There were dozens of other study groups that were involved. The RAND Corporation, Hughes Aircraft, Battelle Institute, we're all conducting studies, Project Stork, Project Twinkle, as far as on the subject. They have no knowledge of the history only because they've decided not to acknowledge it. It's no different than when you assign an underling to investigate something within the military, and you intentionally select someone who is not of a classified rank to have access to the truth. They become an expert on that and only that which they have researched, have investigated. And that's precisely what is going on right now. I maintain that those who are part of this report and their limited access and the question of whether they have clearances to highly classified data, if they really have any knowledge of the true nature of the phenomenon. In many respects, they're going to be like the media. They're going to be, as far as traveling over virgin territory, so to speak. And as a result, it's going to be a very cursory report. I wholeheartedly agree with Gary that we're going to get a lot of gravy and very little meat.
Yeah. Okay. So, but still, Gary, do you believe that this is going to change the perception of the whole phenomenon in the general public?
If it's an interim report and there is an indication that there is going to be some kind of follow-up, more in-depth analysis, then yes. What I fear is that they will try to say, well, this is the definitive report and that's it. We're not going to do anything more. And I think at that point there, if the press choose to, they can try to close it down and stop the tide of news media that's covering this subject now. They may want to try that approach. I'm really hoping that it is just an interim report and they say, well, look, we don't know. We're going to set up more scientific scrutiny, which is good, and we'll report back in maybe another 6 months or a year's time. That would be the way to go, because what we're saying at ICER, and it's our official standpoint and view, is that we want the D&I to be transparent on this issue and release all the Navy data, the ship data, the aircraft data, the telemetry, radar data. This is going to be crucial in establishing what these objects are. And we believe that the more scientific scrutiny of the data is done, the more it will move from foreign technology as a possibility to something that we're dealing unknown, i.e. extraterrestrial and non-human in origin.
Yeah, Don.
If I may add, the one thing that I'm especially concerned about is that unless Congress steps forward and actually calls for hearings, that they would provide a forum for specifically military witnesses, be granted immunity, and then be allowed to testify as to their own personal encounters, their experiences, and demonstrate that we're dealing as far as with someone else's technology, and we're not talking of an earthly origin. And another reason that they're keeping this in the here and now, because as we all know, the phenomenon has been here for decades, possibly centuries. And for them to acknowledge anything prior to 2004, that would truly take it beyond the realm of foreign technology. Because back in the 1940s and 50s, this was hardly Russian, hardly Chinese in any sense of the word. So that's another reason that they're trying to make it as current, as recent as possible, and also for them to maintain control of the access of data. We have nothing before 2004. That's basically going to be their position.
Yeah.
And so, once again, it's going to be the shell game, the old shell game.
And I think that is exactly the point as to why ICER goes public now, because we're going to be the ones that will say, look, we know the evidential history of this subject over the last 70 plus years. We want to put this into perspective. One, that it's a worldwide phenomenon. Two, it's not American only. A lot of Americans still believe it's just America. We have to get that out to a wider audience and say, no, this is worldwide. And we also now need to start saying, well, we have to start preparing for the what if. What if this is really real, as in extraterrestrial non-human? And the only people that are going to do this so far are ICER on a global platform, i.e. with the 27 countries. We should be having a fully global approach to this, because it's not just America, it's not just Soviet, Russian, it's not just Chinese. I mean, this is truly an international situation, and I'd really want to promote the global aspect of this, and we want to tell the evidential history so as we can quickly demolish the foreign adversary angle. If it remains just in the media at 2004 and to now, then they'll try to say, well, it's just new technology, blah, blah, blah. However, if we then expand it and ICER gets onto TV and has discussions in the mainstream media with anchor news people, then we will be able to say, well, hang on a minute, no, this isn't quite the case. This goes back at least 70 years and probably a lot longer, but at least 70 years where records have been kept. And we can show that the objects that are being seen now are not doing anything different from what they were doing in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, when surely the likes of China, which was then quite a third world country in terms of its economic and scientific development, it certainly couldn't be them. And yes, the Soviet Union in the 50s, yes, it was a huge coalition of nations, but it didn't have the capabilities to do the technology that has been displayed for decades. So we can quickly dismantle that. And that's why ICER seeks to get onto the global TV news element, because then we'll be able to give that evidence to the world.
Yeah, Don.
See, here in the States, UFO researchers, investigators, we've been promoted from UFO kooks, UFO nuts, UFO buffs. Now we're UFO enthusiasts. They're using that word. It's like a talking point. But the other talking point that I'm more concerned about, they keep using the word threat. That this is obviously, and it's no news to us, that UFOs, especially as they have been observed and as they have infiltrated SAC facilities, strategic air commands, nuclear missile sites, they clearly have demonstrated as far as a threat in that regard. But if it's only a threat, in modern years, wasn't it a threat back in the 40s, back in the 50s and 60s, as Gary just alluded to? The point being, that's where ICER certainly will fill that void, that where the press is so totally ignorant on the subject. And as a result, the general public, they truly know next to nothing. And that's where ICER will provide the more accurate, more truthful information. And as Gary emphasized, on a global basis, that this has indeed been a global phenomenon. At the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, where I served as Director of Special Investigations for 10 years, we had case reports from over 150 different countries. That's more nations at the time that were in the United Nations. So the phenomena, knows no boundaries. And this is why ICER is unique in that we can provide information unlike any other group throughout the world.
Yeah. Now, Gary, coming to another subject here, you recently presented an interesting piece of evidence that came directly from the British police. We're talking about this infrared footage here. What is it that we're looking at here, and how did you get your hands on it?
Basically, what happened was that one day in September 2016, I was just on social media and I saw this tweet come up on the screen, and it was from the police, and it was a little clip of this object saying, police helicopter spotter has just captured this, any ideas? And I immediately thought, well, one, it's now proven to be from the police, and obviously I have an unofficial national database in the UK for police officer sightings, so immediately I thought this is an authentic police helicopter footage. So then I began a series of Freedom of Information requests to obtain the footage, and they eventually sent me the full I think it's about 7.5 minutes of footage. However, on virtually all aspects of my Freedom of Information requests, they didn't supply me with the audio from the cockpit. They didn't supply me with the geography of the area where this was taken. They didn't supply me with anything. They were very obstructive to giving me more information, but they did at least give me the footage. And this footage is very clear. And what it shows, and was admitted at the time when the police put out that tweet, was that the object was moving against the wind. So that rules out a balloon. That it was only seen in the infrared spectrum of the FLIR cameras, which immediately, the reason why I've released this now is because it immediately struck me that this is very sharp footage as opposed to the grainy footage seen in the Tic Tac gimbal and Go Fast. And I thought, well, this is a FLIR camera from a police helicopter, obviously a responsible source, and this is clearly showing an object in the infrared moving against the wind. It's pretty sharp, and we should be thinking, what is that? And I just wanted to show it from the point of view of saying what is being recorded by the US is almost certainly being recorded in many other countries, including the United Kingdom.
Yeah, so we can be sure that there will be lots of new developments after this UAP TF report has come out, right? Do you also think that other countries may start thinking about whether they will release their stuff too?
I think they will, providing they get some kind of lead from the United States. What you have to understand for people that don't really know much about this subject is that America has controlled the UFO subject since the 1940s, literally since the end of the Second World War. And as we can demonstrate on many occasions, the Americans turn up at all the best sightings all around the world, it seems, in some kind of intelligence capacity, and report back to the central government in the United States. So they control the subject, and I suspect that even that goes as far as Russia and China, that there is a liaison constantly with them over this issue, and that basically I think a lot of people are going to be waiting on how does the American government play this out with this report.
Yeah. So we're very curious. We're already thrilled to see what is going to be in the report. And we've already planned to make something like an emergency Zoom session with as many representatives as possible that will come out as soon as possible as well, right after the report has published. So thank you so much, Don and Gary, for this news update here on our first ICER show. I guess next time we will kind of master the connection problems as well. This is a project in development. So thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, and hopefully one of many. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. And thank you also for watching. Check out our website, ICER.network, and also please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to be and stay informed about the most important subject that mankind is facing today. Bye.